Before we get into this week's video, I just need to do just one quick thing. Just like one. You'll understand. Yes, that's right. If you're unaware, about 3 weeks ago, I made a pretty reckless bet. I was betting that Blake's superhero name would be Nobody. Based on a weird interaction with the townsfolk when he says, "I'm nobody," the classic literature that I mistakenly called the Iliad, to which commenter My No Name corrected my mistake by pointing out it was actually the Odyssey. Thanks for that, My Name. You get the gold star. Ooh. And my last piece of evidence was the symbolism of a superhero name being Nobody. Superhero names are typically, cool, inspiring, threatening, heroic. You get the picture. But the name Nobody would symbolize Blake, someone who started putting others in front of himself. Someone that in reality could be anyone. They just need the correct ideals. The person doesn't matter, they're nobody. The ideals, that's what's important. As long as they have the same ideals, the same justice as these people, anyone could be a hero. Anyways. But speaking of ideals, I wanted to make a video discussing something I've definitely talked about more than any other character. At least more than any other character that isn't John. No, rather this is a general topic rather than a character, but still something critical to the overall story of Unordinary. The hierarchy. The hierarchy is the main reason for the story to be happening at all. It's like 80% of some people's character, and is basically the only reason any of these characters develop at all. Whether it be attacking, defending, following, overthrowing, if you ignore the Ember storyline, then the hierarchy is the main reason for any other story. And I'm 80% sure that Ember was founded upon with something due to the hierarchy. From low tiers to high tiers and cripples to royals, every person has an opinion on the hierarchy. What it is, what it represents, what it does, how it helps, or how it hurts people. I wanted to take a look at what most people believe the hierarchy does, what it's used for, how it actually is, and why it might have started or been established. First, let's take a look at the royals and their position on things. And by royals, I mean the old royals, Arlo, Remy, and Blake. Blake's opinion on the hierarchy is a little confusing. He almost never talks about it. However, his role is relatively simple to understand, as we hear Ace Seraphina talk about why Blake was chosen as Jack. Arlo would never choose Blake over a high tier like Cecile, not with his philosophy. I overruled him. After I sent it to Ace, Arlo and Remy argued for days on who should fill the position, and they still couldn't agree on anyone. So I stepped in and made a decision for them. I sincerely believe Blake would be a better Jack. Cecile may be more powerful, but she's very secretive. She always seems to be hiding something from the rest of us. That makes her difficult to trust. Blake, on the other hand, he's much more open and straightforward. While for most of season 1, Blake was more of a background character, still important to the story but not super important until the later season. But we do get to see a lot of that straightforwardness. Blake believes his role as the protector, especially with the other royals and high tiers. Shooting John's head because he slapped away Remy's hand. Feels especially vengeful towards Joker after he beat up Eisen, and wants to continue growing stronger because he was humiliated. However, the problem with that is a problem you'll get to see. It's that most of the royals only see one side of the situation, the side that benefits them. We get to hear Arlo talk about it in a very edgy monologue while he stands on top of a building. Order is natural. The weak cower in fear of the strong. That's why hierarchy is natural, because people naturally gravitate to where they belong. Meanwhile, Remy's perspective of the hierarchy is, incredibly idealistic to say the least. While discussing the hierarchy with John, she confronts him about his attacks as Joker. He kind of attacks almost every aspect of the hierarchy, don't worry, I'll get to that soon. And Remy tries to defend herself and the other royals and the hierarchy. What are you talking about? We've always tried to maintain a safe environment for everyone in the school. Well, there aren't that many of us, but we try to catch as many incidents as we can. We dissolve the unfair fights we see, and that sets an example for the rest of the school. There's a fun little term. I'm sure we've all heard of it before. The saying, ignorance is bliss. And you know what? It's not an incorrect term. Remy is happy, Blake is fine, Eisen is chilling. Even the ace Serafina was untouchable. Sure, she had the most pressure on her, so she wasn't always happy. But the rest of these guys were living pretty. Sure, not all the high tiers or elite tiers were living their best life. Cecile is constantly being put down for trying to enforce the hierarchy and power, and some other high tiers are kind of put down by Arlo to try to keep the balance. But ignorance is bliss, right? Sure, I guess, but that doesn't make everyone's life blissful. Simply ignoring the problem doesn't make everyone's life suddenly magical and happy and wonderful. That's why this saying doesn't work. Because while some people might be happy, there are a lot of people who aren't. A lot of people who are in pain, who are suffering. Sure, I guess if you don't want to know what's in your hot dog, then whatever. But when people are being physically and mentally broken, then your bliss might not be that great. Luckily, not only do we get to see low tier's perspective on the hierarchy, but we get to see the perspective of two different people who have both been at the top and at the bottom. Serafina understood the pressures of being on top, and casually created a new rank above responsibility and somehow everyone else. But still manages to have power, kind of like if you were the boss of a company and got tired with all the responsibilities of it and gave your position to someone else, but also became super boss and you just kind of chilled on top of your building and played iPhone games, but you were still the most important person at that place. Anyways, even with the whole no responsibility and power thing, Serafina felt the pressure of being at the top. The constant gossip and such was problematic, and it would definitely lead anyone to crash under stress. However, the bigger problem is the people at the bottom. We get to see how quickly people turn on Serafina, jumping at the chance to beat the untouchable goddess, quickly realizing that she can't walk down a hallway without being targeted by practically anyone that isn't a low tier or, surprisingly, the royals. Actually, that's not that surprising. However, the person that has the most experience, let's say, is the man I've made multiple videos about because you love him unconditionally. John Doe. Saying John Doe has been bullied a lot is probably the biggest understatement I can make. He has personal experience. He tells his side of the story multiple times. We hear him be a little more rational in his explanations when he's talking to Eisen. To put it simply, we low tiers don't have any rights. We're not able to defend ourselves. Everywhere is a danger zone for us, so we have to stay alert at all times. Life is scary for us. We can't do what we want or say what we think. One simple run-in could put us out for days or even a week. But luckily, or I guess unluckily, depending on how you view John's psyche, we get to go back to his little argument with Remy. It's about time people realized how useless you high rankers are. None of you deserve to be put on a pedestal. You're all arrogant and entitled, and you abuse your power. Everyone's better off without you. In all the time I've spent here, there's hardly been a day where I haven't been injured. We get a lot of perspectives on how the hierarchy works, why it exists, why it works, or why it doesn't. Arlo, as the king, believes that order, therefore the hierarchy, is natural, that it exists without the need for intervention, without the need for placement, without the need for regulation. Remy, as the queen, believes that hierarchy was made to help people, that the people at the top would help the people at the bottom, creating a safe environment, and would use their powers responsibly. Blake just doesn't care. Meanwhile, basically every low tier or crippled agrees that the hierarchy hurts the people at the bottom, that the more power the people at the top have, the less power the people at the bottom have. As John says, we can't do what we want or say what we think, which is one of the biggest problems. When something isn't working, you talk about it, you try to fix it, you communicate with others, new ideas, new structures, new plans. But when it works for the people in power, they make sure it doesn't get fixed. They make sure they keep all the chips. But that brings a different problem for the people at the top who actually care, like Remy. Even if someone cares, due to a lack of discussion, she has no idea that people have a problem. It also doesn't help that people have such different opinions on how the hierarchy should work. One person believes it's natural. One person believes that the weak should just cower in fear of the strong. Another person believes that the strong should help the weak. Another person just doesn't care. But what about the adults? You know, the people who are actually responsible and probably have a little more mental stability, at least compared to these students. Well, they don't really seem to care. Most of the teachers or staff from Wellston just ignore it, really. Only really questioning it when John rises to power and starts sending way too many kids to the hospital. But every other adult just kind of accepts it as standard life. We hear that high-tier parents teach their children about responsibilities, which I highly doubt. But even people like Keon, who is a government official, try to promote this stuff. Like when he's dealing with John. So most adults treat the hierarchy as fact, teaching their kids that high school sucks and nobody remembers it fondly, as kids are given way too much freedom to make the choices they want, which means people with power rule over others, which is natural. Arlo is kind of right. The strong rise to the top, even if they don't deserve it, but it makes sense. The people with power ruled over the people who don't. It's just nature. It makes sense that it was established. So what? Are they just kind of doomed by nature? Are Arlo's beliefs just kind of continue to survive through time? I don't think so. Thanks to two people. John, of course, and Headmaster Vaughn. Vaughn. How do you say his name? Vaughn. I think his name is Vaughn. I've mentioned Headmaster Vaughn, and I've made his own video, but John was the method. He was the Trojan horse, if you will. The one who would make even the high tiers realize there's a problem, by dishing out pain and damage that they've dished out to other people. Vaughn wanted everyone to realize and start talking about the problems, by making the problems apparent to royals and high tiers. They would want to change it, and he's not wrong. Remy finally sees the problem with it. Blake starts defending anyone who's dealing with an annoying mid or high tier, and a safe house was made. I understand John's hatred for the safe house, for how they're acting now, because he felt it was unfair that people who were weak were treated terribly, but now that everyone's being treated terribly, they now realize the problem. It's not fair to him. He's been bullied for years. He's been hurt for years. Like he said, there wasn't a day that went by that he didn't get injured. And a lot of the new, or the latest John, is angry at the idea of a safe house, because he would have loved that. He would have liked a place where he didn't need to feel in danger. He thinks it's unfair that they establish it now, when everyone's afraid, when everyone's in danger, or when everyone is suffering. But I think that was the point. Vaughn wanted everyone to feel the same pain that John did. That's why he lets John get away with so much. That's why he lets John send so many kids to the hospital. Because he makes everyone realize there's a problem. Because he makes it everyone's problem. Not just low tiers, not just mid tiers or cripples. Everyone's problem. Everyone has to deal with John. Not just the low tiers, not just the people who are weak. Because in John's mind, everyone is weak. In John's mind, everyone is below him. I think the hierarchy was always problematic. Some people realized it, but not the people who could change it. Even when people wanted to change it, like Ray, the other high tiers didn't understand why they needed to change. But by having John basically just bully the other high tiers, now even the high tiers understand the problem with the hierarchy. Well, maybe everyone except Zeke, but he's a punk anyways. But what do you think? Why do you think the hierarchy was established and why it remains? Do you think it could be salvaged, or should it just be completely overthrown? What do you think Vaughn is planning with John? Leave it in the comments below. But, like always, thank you for watching.